Have you ever wondered why some of the world's most disciplined minds wake up before the sun not to chase success, but to confront themselves? There's a kind of silence that doesn't come at nightfall, but in the fragile hours before dawn, when the world is neither fully asleep nor fully awake. If you've ever opened your eyes between 3 and 5 a.m., not startled, not afraid, but simply present, then you've already met it. That heavy, almost sacred stillness where even time seems to pause and listen. Most people experience this moment as a glitch in their sleep, a disruption, a sign that something is wrong. They toss and turn, check the time, curse the clock. But what if it isn't a mistake? What if that moment is an invitation? The Stoics believed that the early morning belongs to those who are ready to face themselves before facing the world. Marcus Aurelius called on himself to rise with purpose, to do the work of a human being, even when the body craved comfort. He understood what few are willing to accept, that strength is not found in noise or motion, but in solitude, reflection, and inner command. So if you wake in those hours, understand this: you are not broken. You are being summoned not by chance, but by discipline, by truth, by something within you that refuses to sleep through life. The hours between 3 and 5 a.m. are not interruptions, they are thresholds, and how you cross them will determine who you become. This is not a routine, it is a ritual. Welcome to the 3 a.m. protocol, Stoicism forged in silence. Before any action, before any word is spoken, you must cross a threshold that most people never even see. The space you enter between 3 and 5 in the morning is not the same space you move through during the day. It is not your kitchen, not your living room. It is something older, quieter, more sacred. It is a place where silence becomes sound, where intention becomes breath, where the unseen within you begins to stir. To treat these hours as just extra time is to misunderstand their power. This is not about productivity. This is not about getting ahead. This is about presence, attention, devotion. You are not setting up a schedule. You are stepping into a ritual. Dim the lights. Put away your phone. Make no plans. Let the world remain asleep. Sit in the quiet, and let the quiet sit in you. You are not here to be efficient. You are here to remember. This space is not made of walls and windows. It is made of willingness. Willingness to be alone, to be honest, to be awake. This is not your house at 3 a.m. This is your temple. And now you enter it. 1. The warrior's oath. There's a moment still, heavy, undeniable, when the world hasn't yet risen but your eyes are open. Maybe it's 3:11 a.m. Maybe it's 4:02. There are no footsteps outside, no emails waiting, no judgment in the air. It's just you. And in that moment, the question is not, should I get up? The real question is, who am I when no one is watching? The modern world has trained us to associate mornings with motivation, with energy hacks, routines, green juice, 5-minute meditations, and checklists. But the Stoics would scoff at that, because a true morning is not about optimization, it's about orientation, about choosing consciously, fiercely who you will be before the world tries to decide that for you. This is why we begin not with action, but with allegiance, not to trends, not to comfort, but to inner command. Before anything else, a warrior declares his oath. The warrior's oath is not a mantra. It is not a pretty quote on a bathroom mirror. It is a declaration of identity made in solitude, in full awareness that the day ahead may test every ounce of discipline, patience, and courage you possess. And yet, you rise not because it will be easy, but because it is required. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus compared life to a military camp. He believed that we are soldiers in the service of nature, placed here not for indulgence but for duty. He said in discourses, "Dare to look up to God and say, 'Use me henceforth to do whatever you will. I am of the same mind. I am equal to the task.'" That is the essence of the oath, a voluntary act of enlistment in the war against chaos, passivity, and inner decay. So how does one begin? You stand or sit, or kneel. You breathe. You speak out loud if you dare. Your voice may crack. It should. This is not a performance. It is a promise. And your words might be simple. "I do not beg for ease. I rise to earn strength." Or, "I will not serve my comfort. I will serve my character." Or, perhaps, "I will do today what I would be proud to die having done." The words are yours, but the weight behind them must be real. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas, mid-40s, a business strategist, quietly successful and quietly falling apart. His marriage ended after years of neglect. Emotional distance he thought could be fixed by more success, more money, more accolades. The company he co-founded was faltering. His health was deteriorating, but none of that broke him. What did was, one morning at 4:03 a.m., when he sat in a quiet apartment, surrounded by silence that felt more like judgment than peace, he looked in the mirror and whispered, "I don't recognize myself." That day, Thomas began a ritual. He didn't read a book. He didn't call a friend. He didn't seek advice. He made an oath. He stood barefoot on the cold floor of his living room, looked into the darkness beyond the window, and spoke, "I have no legacy worth keeping. I will build one, not for the world, for me." And he kept saying it every day. 3:45 a.m. Same stance, same tone, no excuses. And slowly, the oath did what no advice ever could. It realigned him. He began to eat clean, move his body, call his daughter every morning, rebuild his business not with desperation, but with clarity. He still failed, but he never collapsed. Why? Because every morning he had already met his fear and spoken back to it. That's what the oath does. It doesn't prevent chaos. It prepares you to face it without becoming it. Because here's the truth. Most men are reactors. They rise and respond. Emails, texts, impulses, moods, traffic, gossip. They are slaves to the immediate. And because they have made no vow to anything higher, they crumble the moment the world pushes against them. But a man who begins his day with an oath cannot be moved so easily, because he has already chosen before the noise, before the pressure, before the temptation who he will be. He has built a spiritual firewall, a shield of principle, a declaration that reminds him, when fatigue whispers, "Quit," and when comfort says, "Skip it," that he has already decided, "I am not here to indulge. I am here to embody." That's why the warrior's oath isn't for everyone. It's not sexy. It's not marketable. No one claps when you say it. No one sees it but you. And that's the point. Because true strength is not built in public. It's built in the quiet moments when you could be anything and you choose discipline. If you don't know where to start, write your own version. Keep it short, raw, ugly even. Say what you actually need to hear. Speak to the coward in you. Speak to the addict, the avoider, the victim. Remind them they are not in charge anymore. Examples: I am not my past. I am not my cravings. I am not my fear. I am the man who chooses what comes next. Or, I owe the world nothing. I owe my potential everything. Or even, no one will know what I do between 3 and 5 a.m. That's why it matters. And if you break your oath, don't hide. Don't spiral. Rewrite it stronger. Speak it louder. Own the failure. And return to the promise. That's what warriors do. Not win every battle, but keep showing up to fight. In the end, this oath is not a magic spell. It won't fix your life, but it will fix your posture, your tone, your trajectory. It will anchor you when life tries to unmoor you. It will remind you of who you are when no one else is around to remind you. Because the greatest battles you'll fight are not with the world. They're with the part of you that keeps trying to settle, stay safe, stay small. And if you can defeat that part even just a little before the sun rises, you've already won. This is not a ritual of hype. This is the discipline of identity. You don't repeat your oath to feel better. You repeat it to become undeniable. So tomorrow, when your eyes open and the house is silent, don't hesitate. Rise, speak, swear, and begin. 2. Premeditatio Malorum, the mental rehearsal of resistance. Before your day attacks you, ask yourself, what are you willing to let break you today? That question may sound harsh, but it is necessary because most people walk into the world with no armor. They wake up and hope for a good day. They expect it to go smoothly. And when it doesn't, when plans collapse or people disappoint them, they react with confusion, frustration, even despair. The Stoic does not operate this way. The Stoic assumes disruption is inevitable and prepares accordingly. This is the second ritual of the 3AM protocol, the discipline of anticipation. Known in Latin as Premeditatio Malorum, premeditation of adversity. But this is not about becoming a pessimist. It's about refusing to be surprised. When you expect challenge, you are not caught off guard by it. And when you're not caught off guard, you're not controlled by your emotions. Instead, you respond with presence, with strategy, with poise. The Stoics didn't believe in avoiding pain. They believed in robbing it of its power. Each morning, before the chaos of the world enters, you sit in stillness and ask, what might go wrong today? And how will I meet it with strength? Not to predict the future, but to train your mind to remain calm in its face. It might be a failure of your own discipline, maybe the temptation to scroll, to compare, to delay, or it could be someone else's behavior, the dismissive boss, the inattentive partner, the child who tests your patience. You picture these moments before they arrive. You walk into them ahead of Timano, to suffer twice, but to suffer less. And then, for each potential adversity, you prepare your responsono with emotion, but with virtue. If I am dismissed, I will not retaliate. I will remain steady. If I feel anxious, I will breathe, not escape. If I fail, I will learn, not quit. This isn't fantasy, it's mental conditioning. A workout for your emotional muscle. The more you rehearse hardship, the more you reduce its power to control you. The Roman philosopher and statesman Seneca, who faced exile, betrayal, and the constant threat of imperial execution, practiced this daily. In one of his letters, he wrote in Letters to Lucilius. Letter 76. The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. This one line captures the spirit of this entire ritual. Not that you will avoid hardship, but that you will arrive at it already wiser, already ready. There's a woman I once coached, Elena, a mother of 3, working 2 jobs, trying to hold her life together while caring for a parent with dementia. She told me mornings were the worst, not because they were hectic, but because she woke up dreading what might go wrong. She felt paralyzed by the unknown. So we built her a ritual. Before anything else, before phone, before coffee, she would sit in a chair by the window and ask herself 3 questions. What might break me today? How will I respond with strength? What will I refuse to carry into tomorrow? She said it changed her life not because it removed hardship, but because it taught her to meet hardship as a known guest, not an intruder. She became less reactive, more focused. She didn't flinch when things went wrong, because she had already rehearsed staying calm, and that gave her the upper hand not over others, but over her own panic. That is the real prize of Premeditatio Malorum. Not control over the world, but command of the self. So tomorrow morning, after your oath, take 10 quiet minutes. Don't seek to be inspired, seek to be prepared. Picture the hard conversation, the technical failure, the moment you feel invisible, and then choose, right now, how you will move through them. Do not wait to react. Rehearse your resistance. And remember Seneca's truth. The manner woman who anticipates the storm is no longer afraid of the thunder. 3. The fear you've been avoiding. The enemy at your door. You've already sworn your oath. You've named the forces that might shake you. But now, we move deeper. Not toward what might come from the outside, but toward what has already taken root within you. There is always a fear you've been avoiding. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers. The one that knows your name. The one that shapes your choices in subtle ways, what you say no to, what you delay, what you silently shrink away from. And the truth is simple, unmerciful, and liberating. What you avoid is exactly what you must face. This is not motivational advice. It is a spiritual imperative. Stoicism does not ask you to become fearless. It demands that you pretending you are. The Stoic warrior looks not for comfort, but for resistance. He walks toward what others walk around, because he knows that growth begins where avoidance ends. And that's what this third ritual is about. You sit in stillness at the edge of morning, and you name it. The thing you've been dodging, the confrontation you've postponed, the dream you've delayed under the excuse of timing, the conversation you fear will break you, the decision that might require change. You write it down. You say it aloud. You bring it into the light, where it can no longer command you from the shadows. Then you ask yourself, what is one action I can take today, however small, that brings me one step closer to meeting this fear? Not to conquer it, but to make it visible. Because visibility is the first death of avoidance. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, in a letter to Lucilius, wrote in letter 13, Letters to Lucilius, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." End. That single line holds centuries of truth. It dismantles 90% of our hesitation, because most of what paralyzes us isn't the fear itself, it's the fantasy of it. We rehearse catastrophe, not calmly. We amplify stakes until they become impossible. But when we finally act, we find that reality is often manageable, not easy, not painless, but navigable. And through that effort, we reclaim the part of ourselves we once handed over to fear. This ritual doesn't require boldness. It requires honesty and consistency. There's a story I think about often of a stage actor named Milan. Talented, trained, passionate, but paralyzed. He could perform for casting directors, in class, on tape. But when it came time to walk onto a real stage, in front of a real audience, something froze. His breath collapsed, his voice shook, and for years he justified it with the classic narrative, "I'm just not ready yet." Until one morning, at 3:27 a.m., Milan sat in his kitchen with a journal. He wrote one sentence, "I am afraid of being seen." And beneath that, a single question, "Would I do if I stopped hiding?" That day he began a ritual. Every morning before dawn, he stood in front of a mirror and performed one monologue. Just one. No lights, no audience, no applause. Just him, the silence, and the fear. At first, his hands trembled, his voice cracked, but he kept going. One day turned to 30, 30 to 60. After 90 days, he walked onto a stage. And though the fear was still there, it no longer ruled him. Because he had seen it, spoken to it, stood with it every morning. This is what happens when you bring your fear into ritual. It loses its shape. It becomes a practice, a form, something you work with, instead of something that works against you. Most people wait to feel ready, but readiness is a myth. Courage isn't what you feel before you move. It's what shows up because you moved. So when tomorrow comes and you find yourself waking not to noise or duty but to that rare and haunting silence just before the world begins to stir, before alarms, before headlines, before the names others call you, begin to reclaim your attention. Let that stillness become the mirror you've been avoiding. Don't ask what you want to accomplish. That question is too safe, too easy. Instead, ask quietly, honestly, and without defense, what fear you've been carefully stepping around, as if your life could somehow reach its fullness while that fear remains untouched. Ask it not with bravado, not with force, but with reverence. Because the fear that lives closest to your chest is not there by accident. It is not merely an obstacle to remove, but a threshold to cross. It is the thin, invisible line between who you are and who you were meant to become. And while some fears do arise from real pain, from wounds that history has not yet softened, the act of finally turning toward them not with the ambition to solve, but simply with the willingness to seize in itself a form of liberation. You do not have to fix everything, not today, perhaps not ever, but you must stop pretending that fear deserves your silence, because every time you let it sit unspoken, it writes your story for you, and the longer you wait, the more fluent it becomes in your voice. What matters then is not conquest, but movement. Even a gesture as small as naming the thing you fear, letting it find shape in your breath or on a pages, a kind of revolt against the narrative of avoidance. It says, I will not be choreographed by shadows. I will not build my life around exit signs. I will not let fear become my map. If growth is what you seek, then walk slowly, bravely toward the thing that makes your steps uncertain. Not to defeat it, not to perform courage for anyone else's applause, but to reclaim the part of yourself that you abandoned the moment you chose not to speak. So you sit, you breathe, you lower your guard, and if all you can do is write one sentence, let it be enough. I am afraid of _____, and today I will face it. That is the ritual. Nothing ornate, nothing heroic, just one sentence, one step. And if done with honesty, it is not small at all, because in that motion, something profound begins to shift. You are no longer escaping, you are returning. Returning to the place within yourself that fear once claimed and renamed. And that return is not loud, it is not glamorous, but it is powerful. For that is the quiet strength of this hour, not in how loudly you rise, but in how honestly you arrive. Fourth, the Dichotomy Ritual. Mastering the unshakable mind. It doesn't take a tragedy to lose your peace. Sometimes it only takes a traffic jam, a rude email, or a missed opportunity. A single moment outside of your control can hijack your entire day if you let it. But the Stoics believed there was a sacred line that separates the chaos of the world from the clarity of the soul. A line you can choose to honor, a line you can train yourself to return to every morning. This is that training. The fourth ritual of the 3AM protocol is called the Dichotomy Ritual, and it is based on one of the most powerful and misunderstood principles in Stoic philosophy: the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. You see, suffering doesn't always come from what happens. Often, it comes from trying to control what was never ours to command. The weather, the market, someone else's opinion, the outcome of an effort. These are things the Stoic learns to hold loosely. What matters, instead, is how you respond, what you choose, what you cultivate in the one domain that is entirely yours, your character. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus In the very first paragraph of his manual, The Enchiridion, laid this out with absolute clarity. Some things are up to us, and some are not. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions. In short, whatever is our own doing. Not up to us are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not our own doing. This isn't theory. It's a sword you sharpen every morning. The practice is simple, but transformative. Each day, as part of your dawn ritual, you take out a piece of paper and draw a vertical line. On the left, 3 things you cannot control today. On the right, 3 things you can. Maybe you cannot control the global market, but you can control whether you check it every 15 minutes. Maybe you can't control what your coworker says, but you can control the tone of your response. Maybe you can't control how long the traffic light stays red, but you can control what you listen to while waiting. This is not about retreat. This is about realignment, about taking the storm of the external world and separating what's wind from what's wheel. And slowly, as you do this day after day, something begins to happen. You stop reacting to life as a victim. You start responding as a strategist. There's a man named Daniela, once celebrated investor, someone who had built a multi-million-dollar portfolio in his 30s. But when a global crisis hit, he lost 80% of it in 6 months. Friends disappeared. Confidence shattered. The foundation he had built, his identity, on performance, prestige, financial control, crumbled. At first, he spiraled. He obsessed over numbers. Stayed up until 3 a.m. watching market volatility. Reread emails from clients asking if he'd seen it coming. But none of it helped. It only deepened his sense of helplessness. Then one morning, perhaps ironically at 3:47 a.m., he stumbled across a passage from Epictetus. He printed it, folded it, and placed it on his desk. The next morning he wrote 2 lists. On one side, what he could not control. On the other, what he still could. It sounds small, but it became everything. He began each day with those lists. And slowly, the fog lifted. He stopped reacting to every headline. He stopped replaying the betrayal of friends. He focused on studying harder, writing more clearly, rebuilding trust-stone conversation at a time. Within a year, Daniel hadn't recovered his entire fortune, but he had recovered something greater, his ability to navigate uncertainty without becoming it. Because that is what this ritual gives you, a daily reminder that the world will always move beyond your grasp, but your grip can still be firm. You're not pretending the world is calm. You're choosing not to become the storm. What makes this ritual so powerful is how deceptively simple it seems. But in truth, it is profound cognitive training. It rewires the brain to focus on agency, not agony, to act, not to wish, to see clearly instead of catastrophize. Tomorrow morning, when you sit in your quiet space, try this. List 3 things outside your control today. Be specific. Now list 3 things within it. Be honest. And for each item on the right, commit to one action. Not to fix the world, but to lead yourself. Because that is the essence of Stoicism, not passive acceptance, but focused engagement. Not let go in the way of resignation, but let go in the way a warrior drops what is useless so he can hold what matters. In a world that constantly pulls at your attention, your energy, your worth, this simple act of division becomes a form of liberation. You no longer try to control the uncontrollable. You command the controllable, and that's enough. 5. Stillness is a weapon, the discipline of unbreakable presence. Not everything that is loud is powerful, and not everything that is quiet is weak. In fact, some of the strongest forces in the world move in silence, gravity, time, the pulse of your own blood, The same is true of the mind. What truly shapes you isn't always the fire of motivation or the noise of ambition. Sometimes, it's the calm you learn to carry when everything around you demands that you panic. This is where the fifth ritual begins. After your oath, your mental rehearsal, your confrontation with fear, and your clear-eyed separation between control and surrender, what remains is silence. Not the absence of noise, but the cultivation of stillness. And in the Stoic worldview, stillness is not a luxury. It is not a break. It is not a spiritual escape. Stillness is a weapon, and it is forged in discipline. You don't sit in silence to feel better. You sit in silence to become stronger. When you practice stillness through stillness, you are not chasing clarity, peace, or transcendence. You are training the mind to hold its ground. You are rehearsing how not to run. You are conditioning the deepest part of yourself to endure the fire without becoming the fire. And in a world that pulls you in 100 directions before breakfast, the ability to sit with your own thoughts without reaction, without escape, is an act of rebellion. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. As emperor of the most powerful empire in the world, burdened by war, betrayal, and the weight of leadership, he still found time each morning to turn inward. In Meditations, he wrote, "People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, in the mountains, but nowhere can a man find a retreat more peaceful or more untroubled than in his own soul." That sentence is not a poetic sentiment. It is a strategy for survival. Because when the mind becomes your sanctuary, nothing external can truly break you. When you know how to return to the breath, not to escape, but to observe, you stop being the puppet of every thought, every fear, every stimulus, and you begin to see clearly. That's what this ritual teaches you. Each morning, before the noise begins, before you give the world permission to speak, you sit for 3 to 5 minutes. No apps, no mantras, no expectations, just presence. You don't try to fix your thoughts. You don't try to push them away. You let them pass like weather over a mountain, and you remain unmoved. That's it. The point is not to feel calm. The point is to practice not needing to feel anything in order to stay grounded. Because if you can sit in silence without needing to be entertained, validated, or relieved, then you're building a strength that the modern world has almost forgotten. I once spoke to a founder of a startup that had just gone through its third funding collapse. He was barely sleeping, stretched too thin, leading a team that was losing faith, and he felt himself falling apart. "Every morning felt like a courtroom," he said. "I woke up and the voices started what I didn't do yesterday, who might quit today, whether I'm about to fail everyone I care about." So I asked him what he did before all that noise started, and he said, "Honestly, I checked my phone." That became the change. He deleted every app, and for the next 90 days, every morning, before anything else, he sat on the floor in his living room. Lights off, phone out of reach, no music, no intention, just silence. Some days it felt like a waste. Some days it brought tears. But every day it gave him a place to return to, a space that the crisis could not touch. He told me that while the business did eventually recover, it wasn't that recovery that saved him. It was the space he created in silence that allowed him to endure the waiting, the uncertainty, the possibility of collapse, without collapsing himself. That's what stillness is for. You don't use it to escape the world. You use it to prepare for it. You don't sit in silence to avoid action. You sit in silence so that your action can come from clarity, not from reaction, not from fear, not from the momentum of panic. Even warriors need a moment to breathe, to listen, to sharpen the blade not just of steel, but of thought. So tomorrow, when your eyes open before the world does, don't move too quickly. Don't try to fill the space. Sit in it. Let it hold you. Let your thoughts rise and fall without judgment. And don't chase any of them. Let them pass like clouds, and let the ground beneath you, the steady beat of your breath, remind you. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fear. You are the one who watches, the one who stays. And that one cannot be shaken. The world will roar. Let it. The day will demand. Let it come. But before any of it enters, give yourself these few minutes of unmovable presence, not as a gift, not as a privilege, but as training, because in the quiet, when no one is watching, and your mind is doing what it always does, wandering, fearing, and you choose not to follow, that is when you win. You win not by defeating chaos, but by refusing to become it. That is stillness. That is strength. And that is the weapon no one sees but everyone feels. 6. The Farmer Philosopher. Ryan Holiday and the Discipline of Quiet Greatness. You've sworn the oath. You've rehearsed resistance. You've stared into fear. You've drawn the line between what you can control and what you cannot. You've even sat in the brutal, beautiful stillness of a mind, learning not to flinch. But now comes the final ritual, not of theory, not of internal combat, but of embodiment. Because philosophy, for the Stoic, is never finished at the level of thought. It must be lived, repeated, sowed into the soil of the day, until it becomes indistinguishable from your character. And no one in the modern world exemplifies this like Ryan Holiday, the quiet, deliberate, fiercely consistent Stoic of our time. He is not a celebrity in the traditional sense. He does not chase stages or hashtags, but his words have been read by presidents, athletes, artists, soldiers, and CEOs. His books have sold millions of copies, translated into dozens of languages. Yet he lives not in a penthouse in Manhattan, nor a Silicon Valley villa, but on a modest farm in the heart of Texas, rising before the world, sowing his seeds in silence. Each morning, long before social media begins its frenzy or the news begins to spin its noise, Ryan wakes at 5 a.m. No phone, no inbox, no browsing. The day begins with Meditation's Marcus Aurelius beside his morning coffee. Then he writes 500 words. No expectation, no performance, just practice. Afterward, he walks alone through the field for 45 minutes, rain or shine. No headphones, no podcast. Just movement, reflection, reconnection. This ritual is not glamorous, it is not dramatic, but it is sacred, because it reflects something most of the modern world has forgotten, that greatness is not a burst of brilliance, but a discipline repeated in obscurity, that the Stoic life is not built in front of cameras but behind closed doors, before sunrise, when no one else is watching. It would be easy to dismiss this routine as lifestyle branding, but that would be a grave mistake, because Ryan's way of life is not posturing, it is proof. He's written over a dozen books. The obstacle is the way, ego is the enemy, stillness is the key. Books that have become foundational texts for a generation hungry for wisdom that works. And they are not just clever titles, they are lived experience. Each phrase, each principle, forged in the quiet hours before the world's demands arrive. His discipline is not a performance. It's a rhythm, a rootedness, a vow. What makes him truly powerful is not his eloquence, but his absence of noise. He does not shout, he does not provoke, he does not bait with drama. And yet, people follow. Why? Because he has done something far rarer than go virally, has built trust. And that trust comes not from marketing, but from living what he teaches. In one of his most intimate passages, Marcus Aurelius reminds himself in Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Holiday does exactly that. He does not spend time defining Stoicism for others. He simply practices it. And in that practice, he becomes the clearest mirror we have today of what it means to live the philosophy not as a brand, but as a way of being. What's astonishing is not how much Ryan does, but how much he refuses to do. He refuses to let the phone dictate his first thoughts. He refuses to let email set his agenda. He refuses to create content for the algorithm instead of for the soul. That kind of refusal is rare, and it is radical, because it means he has chosen the harder path, the slow one, the quiet one, the one that requires more from you, not less. But in that quiet, he produces a body of work that is anything but small. His books have been read in the White House Situation Room, on the training fields of NFL teams, in the meditation rooms of Navy SEALs. And yet, every morning, he is back at the farm, walking in silence, writing before anyone sees, still planting, still tending, still showing up. This is not a man chasing success. This is a man becoming unmoved by it. There is something deeply stoic about that. Imagine a man alone in a field, before the world wakes, doing the work no one sees, so he can live with integrity when the world begins to watch. In many ways, Ryan Holiday is not merely a writer. He is a farmer of thought. He does not trade in trending ideas. He cultivates timeless ones. And like any true farmer, he understands that what matters is not what blooms quickly, but what endures through drought, through winter, through silence. You want to live like a Stoic? You don't need to memorize quotes. You don't need to post reels of cold plunges or screaming at the sun. You need to wake up and do what matters quietly, daily, fully. You need to sow the seeds of virtue when no one is watching. You need to write, reflect, walk, work not to be seen, but to become. That's the final lesson of this ritual. You can practice the oath. You can name your fears. You can train your mind to stay still and your will to act. But until you make it part of your life, until you embody it in the rhythms of your morning, in the structure of your diet, remains only knowledge. And Stoicism was never about knowing, it was always about becoming. Ryan reminds us of that, not through speech, but through silence. And so, when you wake tomorrow, don't rush to post, to plan, to prove. Sit with the silence. Read something ancient. Write something honest. Walk somewhere quiet. And let that be enough. Because when the world finally catches up to you, you will already have done the real work. The work no one sees. The work that changes everything. You don't need to master all 6 rituals at once. You don't need to be perfect, unshakable, or heroic before the sun rises. What matters is that you begin with one honest act, one moment of presence, one vow you no longer break. Waking up between 3 AM and 5 AM is not an accident. It's not insomnia. It's a signal, a sacred summons, a doorway between the noise of the world and the voice within you. Most will roll over. Most will chase sleep, distraction, or excuses. But a few, those who dare to live deliberately, will rise. And when you do, you are not just waking early. You are stepping into the 3 AM protocol, not to do more, but to become more. Not to chase the world, but to lead yourself. This is not self-help. This is self-discipline. This is philosophy, practiced in silence, sharpened by stillness, and carried forward in every choice you make. So if this message has stirred something in you, let it move through action. Like, share, subscribe. Not for us, but for the future. You who will thank you for not pressing snooze on your potential. And now we want to hear from you. What fear are you facing? What ritual will you begin? Share your experience in the comments. When you speak, you strengthen not just yourself, but someone else who needed your words today. As you go, carry this question. If you were summoned by the universe at 3am not to scroll, but to transform, would you answer? Thank you for spending this time with us. Stay strong, stay still, and rise before the world. Comment below. I rise before the world and fight before the sun. Even if you don't comment, write your oath in your journal. That's where real rituals begin.